Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find other episodes on meditationpodcast.org. My guest is on a mission to transform lives and uplift the world one night of sleep, quality sleep at a time. With over a decade of experience in the gritty, high-stakes world of veteran recovery, he brings an unparalleled depth of insight forged through lived experiences in mental health, wellness, research, and breathwork. Alongside his team, he's raised over $1 million, or maybe that's Australian dollars, we don't know, but he can tell us in a minute, for impacting charities like Gallipoli Medical Research Foundation, driving advancements in veteran health, and the Queensland Brain Institute, a global leader in neuroscience and mental health research. From Queensland, Australia, please welcome Tim Thomas.
Roy, great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. Look, there's a load that I want to go through because you were gracious sending me a audiobook as well, which I enjoyed. So, I mean, obviously you're helping people with sleep and you've the breath work. So what we want to do now is we just go back a few layers and kind of learn a bit more about Tim, your own kind of journey.
Yeah, well, to start with, I guess my most defining feature was that I was dyslexic growing up. So failed everything at school, and you tell a kid they're stupid enough and you start to believe it. But it's funny, the very thing that you get sort of ridiculed about is the very thing that can often be your defining feature, your contribution to the world. So I never saw myself as a sleep coach or a breathwork coach. I just saw patterns, and I saw that energy is like money. How you invest, it's how you get it back. And, you know, fast forward from a kid that just thought he was stupid, like the sky's blue, my name's Tim and I'm stupid. And it wasn't until I was 25 and I did these IQ tests, and maybe I'm not as stupid as everyone says, right? And that gave me a real heart because I asked the question, how many people out there have these incredible seeds of greatness, but they're buried beneath a centimeter of self-doubt or that they don't know their value, So it really made me think how many people out there are just have greatness inside of them, but they have some sort of hurt. Like I was told I was stupid, and I had a certain belief system that backed that up, and I couldn't give my gifts. It was only actually when I started really helping others, when I got out of the special forces, had PTSD, that I started getting out of my own way and seeing that these veterans, if you improve their sleep, then everything improved. And that was just a pattern I saw happening again and again. And that's easier said than done. But in that really hardcore space, I found breath work was one of the fastest ways to activate the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system, the ability for the body to slow down, to hit the brake. Because most people, they know how to accelerate, hit the gas, go hard, don't worry about fatigue, just keep putting the foot on the gas. And there is a time and a place for that. I think countries are made great by that. And I think, you can find out what your potential is by pushing yourself. But I don't think there's enough press out there to show a person how to truly slow down and rest and recover. Because if you go by the car analogy, if you keep revving, your body only heals when the revs drop below a certain point. You know what I mean? And it's unsustainable, always revving and not giving yourself time to heal. So that's why I was very excited to be on this meditation podcast, because meditation does right, allows us to drop our revs, connect back into our bodies, and then we can perform again the next day. So I hope I haven't wandered too much far away from your initial.
And I mean, no, exactly. And like, if we look at, say, the education system, because like I remember in school as well, same thing. I was either the worst in the class or the best in the class, depending on the teacher or just my, whether I loved the subject or not. And I even with one subject, with history, I was the worst in the class, getting something like 18 or 17% to getting 100% with a different teacher a couple of years later. Yeah. So like, but the thing is, we're based on a kind of memory system, unless it's taught to us in a way that we can. And the whole education system is flawed. And I'm just curious, because breathwork definitely kind of wakes up. Can you ever see the education system embracing breathwork?
It's funny you should mention that, because they get me into high schools to show the high school students how to breathe a certain way to get past their exam stress and activate their brain when it needs to. And so the way I tell it to the students as well as the teachers, it's not so much a set of lungs that we own, it's a medicine cabinet with a lot of different shelves. So it's not just to relax yourself. That is one facet. You can use it to pick yourself up. You can use it to focus. You can use it to refresh. You can use it to, get ready to fight. So you basically, what I like showing people is that we are the alchemist. For thousands of years, the Chinese have been saying, control your breath, control everything. So I have proven the power of it, and the teachers love it. But unfortunately, I'm just one person, and that's why I've looked at myself and I thought, well, I'm not the powerful one here. If I do my job right, I'm not even a breathwork coach. I'm the person who introduces you to the love of your life. Breath is going to be your most loving companion you're ever going to have. It's going to be there when you go to sleep, when you wake up, when you want to calm yourself, when you want to pick yourself up, when you need courage. It's going to be there. And that's why I mentioned in the preamble, I withdrew myself from public life about 2 years ago, because everything I do has to pass a P test, 3 Ps, right? Has to be powerful, has to be positive, but it has to be permanent. And in the wellness space, there's a lot of powerful and positive stuff out there, like the positive circus comes to town and rah, we can do it, we can do it. But then a week later, what's changed? A week later, some people feel lower than what they felt because they've tasted the top of the mountain. Now they're in the valley. And so I thought, well, if you really are about empowering people, it's about connecting them to something powerful permanently. And so 2 years ago, I got an email from a very high-ranking army officer in the Australian Army. And I'd just done a workshop out on the local army base. He didn't attend, but all his corporals and sergeants were going up to him saying, we had the first good night's sleep in up to 5 years. Now, this officer thought it was amazing. I thought it was terrible. They haven't slept in 5 years. You know how many problems can be caused in 5 years of no sleep? Anyway. But what he said next withdrew me from public life. And he said, it was good when you were there, but what have you got for them when you're not there? And I'm like, crap, I've just failed my P test. I am not permanent. And not being the one that is the powerful one here, I just need to be the one that connects the person to their breath. So I've spent the last couple of years creating a company called Breathwork in Bed that gives people access. If they've got a phone, and at this stage, if they speak English, then they can get these guided breathwork experiences. It's like a little breathwork buffet on your phone, but I specifically orientate myself towards sleep. Why? Because I can't do what you do, Roy, and I can't do what your listeners do. But if I can improve your sleep, then I can improve everything you do. And I sincerely believe that if you truly care for somebody, you'll care about their sleep. Because I'll tell you something funny. In the Special Forces, we used to deliberately target our enemy's sleep. Why? Because we knew if we could take their sleep out for 3 nights, it would mess their head up better than a bullet. Incomprehensible, very easily suggestible. And then I come back to my home country that I love, and there's a lot of people not sleeping. There's no clear enemy, but it's like our consumer society knows that if we're fatigued, we're a lot more suggestible. We're more open to suggestion. Hey, you do need a certain type of shoes to feel good about yourself. You do need a certain car. You do need a certain this. And obviously you've got no value inside of you. So your value has to be seen by the outside world. There's no priority put on the unseen value in developing it. And so I believe that if I can improve someone's sleep, the exciting part to me isn't just improving their sleep and making them feel better. If you go off the analogy that sleep is the soil from which everything grows, inside everybody, there's those seeds of greatness, seeds of uniqueness, those gifts that they have. But those seeds lie dormant and they're waiting for the right soil conditions. And if that soil is in fatigue, they're not going to germinate. So the exciting thing for me, yes, the first step is improving sleep, but there's an accumulative effect of quality sleep. You actually become more yourself. You become this empowered person. Those seeds of greatness cannot not grow. And so I'm in this position now where I'm just really enjoying sitting back and watching the show, seeing someone go from a state of fatigue to a state of empowerment, and they're giving their gifts so generously into the world because they know how to restore themselves by something as simple as breath work. And I've created a very easy, set of micro habits that can be accessed.
And just what you said there about in warfare, I had heard that the German Nazis, that they were on all psychedelics, and that's why they were able to, with their blitzkrieg, just to decimate France and Poland in a couple of days. It was like they didn't need to sleep, but the enemy obviously did, and that's how they were able to defeat them, because it was, everyone was like, how was that possible? So when you hear that, so just like, I mean, obviously we're going to delve deeper into the app and all the different things, but like your own story then, like what made you get into the army and your experience, because like I believe you were in Afghanistan as well, because most people like they think of America that's there, they don't think of the other countries that are going in there. So what was it like, your kind of experience in the military?
Sure. Well, I did my deployments to Afghanistan and East Timor. The only kind of unique thing about my service, Roy, was they started in the first time in the military history, a scheme where civilians could be streamlined directly into the special forces. Because before that point, you had to spend 2 years in a regular infantry battalion before you could even apply. So obviously you had to pass a bunch of tests. I'm told that between 5,000 and 10,000 civilians initially applied. Of that intake, you've got to pass physical, mental, psychological, aptitude, IQ, blah, test. And then there were 70 people. It was January 4th, 2004. And I was in that initial 70. And I was the oldest one there. The oldest allowable age was 30. And everyone was saying, you're too old. But the good thing about dyslexia is seeing things in patterns. And I saw, it was obvious to me that was the first time I'd ever aged. I'd never aged before, believe it or not. It's kind of obvious, right? Everyone who's listening to this, you've never been that age before. It's the first time. So shouldn't it be you defining what you can and can't do at that age? And so many people saying you can't do it, you're too old. And I thought, well, that's them saying it. I don't want their words to be in my mouth. And so of the 70 that started, there was plenty of guys younger, fitter, faster, stronger than I was. But, Roy, we're probably of the same vintage. Going to school, getting beaten up, that was just a Tuesday. Whatever. Wouldn't even tell your mum and dad. And some days you win, some days you wouldn't. Sometimes that little kick would clock you on the chin and you're just looking up really quickly. And so there was a certain physical toughness that I had that was kind of in me. So I could handle the physical stuff. Special Forces selection, my firstborn was born on it. And I said, look, can I see my son being born? They said, no, this is Special Forces selection. You either see your son being born or you do selection. You can't do both. And, that was tough. On top of all the physical duress, I had to get out of my own head and say, what does that child life coming into the world need? Does it need me physically there, or does it need a dad with a job? Because before that moment, I was working very hard as a very underpaid professional fighter. So I had no qualifications to do anything above minimum wage. And I wanted to give my son the life that I want him to have. So I got my then wife, I call her my then wife, not my ex-wife, because I stand for a positive future. I got my then wife, her sister-in-law down, and my mother down to give her all the support she needed. But look, long story short, it takes a very different type of courage to go into a war zone when you've got children. And they get you to do something very interesting before you deploy. They get you to write a letter to your loved ones. And some guys were like, fuck that. I'm not doing that. They couldn't comprehend that idea. And the funny thing is, I always thought I was going to die. I really genuinely did. And I remember being, and this is where I discovered breathwork, because we get trained to deal with fatigue and duress. You know, you get the top percentile of people that can deal with that stuff. But on deployment, it goes to a whole new level. You lose good friends. You know, you have bits blown off friends. And I remember we were a couple of weeks outside the wire. Outside the wire means you're outside your safe, barracks, and it's day and night. Stuff is going on all the time, and you don't get anything you'd call sleep. You're extremely fatigued, and it's a whole new level. And I remember thinking, what's the point? I got like 2 cents worth of energy and I feel like I'm going to die. And I remember just staring out at the desert for about 5 minutes thinking, what's the point? There is no point. And then something came to me. It says, Tim, if you've only got 2 cents worth of energy, you better invest that 2 cents wisely. So we never got anything that you'd call a proper night's sleep, but when you could lay down, you'd be so tired, you'd just try and sleep. But I thought, no, I'm going to take that 2 cents and I'm going to breathe. Now, the funny thing is, in the Army, they teach you how to shoot and they incorporate breath work with it. So before you take a sight picture, before you line up to hit something, you breathe in, breathe out, hold, and then take up the trigger pressure. So, my dominant hand's my right. So I focused on my left hand. I'd take a deep breath in and I'd picture breathing into my thumb, and I'd breathe relaxation. I'd breathe light. My thumb became light, and then my index finger became light. My pointer finger became light, my index finger, my ring finger. And then I'd slowly but surely move this light through my whole body with my breath. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just instinctively knew it felt good. And I was completely stuffed and I had nothing left. So this was like all I had in the middle of nowhere. You know, if I was in a place where I could, drink a beer or take a bunch of vitamins, I probably would. But because I had nothing but my breath, that's all I used. And I'm like, this is working. And I woke up with like 8 cents worth of energy. And so seeing the pattern, energy's like money, how you invest, it's how you get it back. And then I just kept on reinvesting in what I could with the breath and the sleep. And I got to a point where I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. I can invest back in my body. And I'd do like a mini workout, like some extra push-ups, sit-ups, lift an ammo crate. And when I started leveling out, it's funny how you think to the level of your energy. When I was really fatigued, I was just thinking about me. But when my energy got to a certain point, I started becoming aware of that which was outside of my own body. And that was my team. And I noticed that if I could be having a good day, but if my team's having a bad day, then I'm having a bad day. And I thought, well, I've got to now do things in such a way where I can pour into my teammates, because even if I didn't like these guys, and there was times we didn't like each other, it's in my best interest to have them being the best version of themselves. Because who do I want around me when good times turn bad? And I'm pretty thick-skinned, Roy. I needed to go to Afghanistan, have my ass on the line to put it in my DNA that when the person next to me is stronger, I'm stronger. So it was quite a journey, because I discovered in that moment, the power of servanthood. Because I thought servanthood was servitude. When you're being of service to somebody, when you're giving to somebody, and it doesn't take many people to do it. I started, my act of service to people was making coffee. And that might sound easy, but in a special forces unit, it's a funny dynamic, because there's a lot of insecure alpha males in there. Now, if you do an act of service to an insecure alpha, if you do something for them they didn't pay for or earn, then they say, well, that person's below me. That person's in servitude to me. And I knew that if I started making coffee for people, they're going to call me the brew bitch. All right. And that was the thing. I'm like, I've worked too hard to be here. No one's calling me the brew bitch. Someone's getting politely knocked the fuck out. But this is what I was up against here. I was up against my own resistance. And again, I had to see the self-benefit. Who did I want around me when good times turn bad? And I noticed that things only get hard when we don't see the self-benefit. And so when I started to get into actions and be of service, I noticed when I dropped my ego, it became a bridge to anywhere I wanted to go to. And the idea of, okay, well, other people have to think of me a certain way. I dropped that idea, I dropped my ego, and then you walk over it. And I had to go to that place of having my own ass on the line to actually realize that. And you know, I think that's very much a freedom to be free of what other people think, what we think of ourselves. And I thought, well, what the hell are we over here fighting for? And so I felt that I was led to these experiences, and I survived it, thank goodness. And now I see that, you know, simply articulating things like this allow people, they don't have to go to Afghanistan to sort of have themselves line up to that truth. Because if what I'm saying to you right now is making any sense, it's not because I've invented it. It's simply because I discovered it, and I'm just pointing it out, and people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they kind of knew it, but they just needed someone to, you know, articulate it. And this is why, again, I love podcasts, because people that listen to podcasts are usually seekers of authenticity and truth. You know, you're not looking at the dopamine fix of social media, which I call social junk mail. And again, I feel like I'm tangenting here, Roy. Am I giving you what you mean?
No, it's all brilliant. It's all, yeah, no, I didn't interrupt because it was fascinating what you were saying. And like, I just curious because like you mentioned, you got the PTSD when you came back, but do they kind of give you any help or kind of expectations or what to be prepared for before you go? But when you come back, was there any support from the military for what you experienced?
Okay, so they do offer support in the way of like psychology, but it became very obvious that if you said you had any problems in that regard, they would kick you out. So everyone's like, no, everything's fine. Okay. And and this is the problem. We associated asking for help as a sign of weakness. And if you're weak, you'll let the team down, and we'll die before we let the team down. And it was so hard for me when I got out. And I need to say this now. Again, dyslexics see things in patterns. And psychologists study for 7 years, and no one tells them, Roy, that the trauma goes down deeper than the words can reach. Okay? Talk therapy is good for limited things, but for trauma, okay, it's deeper than the words can reach. No one's told them that. And I feel like when I was seeing a psychologist, I'm like, your rifle can shoot 200 meters, but my things are like a kilometer away. And they'll just say, oh, look, I'm shooting in the right direction. Look how good my gun is. I spent 7 years learning how to use it, and I use it every day. I'm like, you're not hitting my targets. And a lot of people I know, they've sought help. The help didn't help. In fact, it made it worse. And if I could get really real, my origin story, and this is where I could have been a real villain, or I could have been a hero, started when I'd gotten out of the military. It was April 2011, and I'd reached rock bottom. Family's fallen apart. I was taking a lot of alcohol, and I didn't know what to do. Undiagnosed PTSD. And I thought, well, what do you do when your head's all messed up? I guess you see a psychologist, and I don't understand what's going on. So I've got to see some guy I don't know and I don't trust. And so I'm driving there, and I'm peeking out that I have to see this psychologist. And then I thought, okay, let's just tell him everything that went on. Hopefully he can sort something out. And I soon discovered this guy wasn't just incompetent. I can deal with incompetence. He was completely apathetic, didn't give a crap. And at the end, after I told him all the crap that I saw in service, he's like, oh, you think it was a problem with your mum and dad? All right. And at that moment, Roy, everything in that room froze, and I became very aware of everything that was in there. You know, the tick-tick second clock went, and I saw that he had a glass frame psychology degree behind him. And in my state of disconnect, it made a lot of sense to grab that psychology degree and jam it down his throat. Because this man was supposed to be a healer, and he's not just not healing, he's causing harm. So in my mind, it makes a lot of sense to remove him. So I get out of my chair to do it. And then I feel a hand on my chest and the words red flag. I don't know why, but red flag. And the words, Tim, you're the toughest mofo you know. How many other people are in a system that doesn't understand how to help, is incompetent and apathetic? How many other people are struggling right now? And I sat back down, Roy, and literally that's when I saw them. I saw all these people left and right of me, and they're all looking in, saying, Tim, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us. And it was such a moment, because I then said, look, it doesn't matter if it takes me a week, a month, a decade. I've got to find a way forward. I don't know how, but I've got to find a way, because I've got a pretty good feeling that if it takes me 10 years to figure this out, that's the amount of time I'm going to be able to save all these other people. And I don't want to, and my journey to this realization was through the veteran path, that it's a universal theme here. And I just ask everyone listening to draw this question to themselves right now. Everybody's up against something. Okay. It could be a work thing, a relationship thing. There could be something you want to achieve in your life, but there's something stopping you. Everyone has some form of blockage. And the golden question to ask is, how many other people do you think are in your situation right now? And take the time to give it a genuine number, because they're really out there right now and it's really happening. This is really real. This isn't something we've made up or just we think a certain way. And no, these people are real. And let's say it's 100, let's say it's 1,000, let's say it's 1,000,000. So you are no longer 1 in 1,000. You are 1,000 in 1. As you are moving forward, as you're seeing that counselor, as you're going to that, health facility, as you're building yourself up, there is 1,000 people doing it with you. And you might not even have met them yet, but at some point in your future, they're going to be saying, you know what? I'm so glad back in 2025, you started making really powerful choices, because that's helped us move forward in far less time. Because the thing that made me particularly powerful in the veteran recovery space, because I had a personal goal of saving 40 veteran lives from suicide. That's how many men we've lost in Afghanistan to bombs and bullets, but we've lost probably 20, 30, 40 times that amount to suicide. Not many people know that. And this is in Australia. And I thought, well, if I can save 40 guys from suicide, I'm going to die happy. But that was achieved within 12 months because of two things. The first one I discovered when I was in that place, when I was feeling all alone and I was ready, it made sense to me to kill a man, is that it doesn't matter if the pain's physical or emotional, Roy. It'll get to a certain duration or intensity where it transforms, without the person even knowing, into loneliness, isolation. And it's the loneliness that is the absolute killer. Because if no one's got my back, I can't drop my guard for a second. Everything's a threat because everything is a threat. You think I'm sleeping? No. And you end up just cooking yourself on the inside when you're not feeling connected. Now, and I want to take this to the other extreme, because I believe us humans are built for connection. So, Roy, as example, if you knew I had your back 100 frickin' percent, and I knew you had my back 100%, like everything else is a very small detail. Trust is the most powerful thing we can give a fellow human. But the opposite to that is if I'm feeling alone, isolated, everything's hard because everything is hard. So understanding that it's not the pain that is the problem, it's the loneliness and isolation that it transforms into. Because there's millions of dollars being poured into veteran recovery or mental health in general. But if it's going into somebody who is feeling all alone, It's water off a duck's back. And the second thing that I discovered is very closely related into the reason why most resources just slide away. And that is fatigue. So if you are all alone and no one's watching your back, you can't trust anybody, you can't drop your guard for a second because something bad's going to be happening. It's going to be your fault. So breaking the isolation is the first step, but it can't stay there. You then need to get them out of fatigue. So and what I noticed, because I work mostly with men, is that us men, we've got these unspoken words inside our heart because we don't want to share the pain with somebody. We feel like we'll cause them pain if we share it. And what we're all looking for is a man who's walked our path and we respect to speak the words that are unspoken in our hearts, because those words turn to rocks around your heart. And when another man who's walked that path can articulate, hey, this is where I was at and this is where you're at, then it's a physical change. What normally happens is the jaw pops open like this, okay? And then you hear words like, fuck, I thought I was the only one. And that is the first step in recovery, breaking that isolation, just simply knowing someone who's done it before. And again, this ties into anyone listening right now, the thing that you're up against. It could be breast cancer, it could be a relationship thing, whatever it is. If you get through that, or whatever you've gotten through, you are now qualified to break the isolation of someone in that situation. And that is the absolute tip of the spear for recovery. But it can't stay there, because what us veterans veterans are good at this, but I've seen a lot of other mental spaces doing it where it feels really good to break the isolation, but veterans form these antisocial social groups, right? I can only hang out with other veterans and we can break our isolation. It feels good to have that, security through insecurity almost, right? I can only be myself when I'm in this veteran group 1 hour a week. And it probably happens in other mental health spaces where people get together, form a circle, and, it's good to be not alone in this thing, but no one's moving forward. So, getting them out of fatigue, I noticed if those two things happen, it's like people have this golden compass that just starts waking up once they're out of fatigue, once they're got their isolation broken. They naturally know where they need to go next, and they've got all the resources they need to get there. So people have, in my observation, people have 95% of everything they need to heal. They just need their isolation broken, and they need to be getting out of fatigue, and then they just take care of itself. So that was the observation that I saw working just time and time again. Something I discovered, I didn't invent. I am not qualified for any of this. I just walked that path before I could see the pattern. I didn't necessarily understand it. I didn't study it for 7 years to understand. I'm like, if we do this, then this keeps happening. So let's keep doing the things that are working. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, right?
No, and it's fascinating. There's a few things that you've touched there, and it's like, one is like, a lot of men do definitely bottle it up, because if they're with the wrong person, instead of being a support, they make them feel like they're weak or there's something wrong with them as well. And once they're burnt once, they might then be with a different partner who might be different, but they've just been tarnished and they're afraid to open up. And like, I love what you said about, like, there's 1,000 of us, because sometimes we think, oh, life is against me. I've got battered with a brush. And with me, like, I was never in the military, but basically my situation was I lost everything, and I was personally liable, like, for 5 million, and went through over 100 court cases. But what I did is, even though they scare you into, like, you've judge systems and banks and everything threatening to put you on a publication, which is like the biggest bully boy you could see. Like, now your enemy wouldn't do that to you. But what I found is I was never afraid to open up. And once I started telling my story, I remember there was one guy at an event, he was training Navy SEALs and he started crying when I told him the whole story. He said he's never seen anyone so tough with what I've been through, because there was some serious shit that I went through. But it was like when I started opening up to different people, the amount of stories that people then, it was like they were afraid to say what they were going through because of the shame. And like I could see like a relief on them by being able to actually say, it's okay to say, I've lost my house or I've lost my business. You're not a failure. So what you've said is beautiful. And I think people don't be like, the more you say it, the more you can, like if you, like you've said you've helped 40 people, and obviously that was in the first year, so a lot more. And once you help, like if you can help one person, and that person then is so grateful, that's what I've learned. It's the ripple effect, that the people that you've helped, they understand the power of what you've done for them. And you don't know the impact that you've had compounded. It could be by 1,000.
That's so super powerful, Roy. And the good thing about what you've just done, working in with universal truth, and that is we are built for connection, but we carry these blockages. When you shared about your experience with that blockage, you cleared for somebody else. And so that's why when tears come out, that's the blockages melting away, and you enabled them to do that which we are born to do, which gives us joy, gives us power, gives us peace, gives us love, and that's connect. You've spoken about the blockage of pain and how you've come through it, and it's not the pain, it's the isolation you feel when you're in it. So breaking that person's isolation, because if we're connected to one another, bring on the pain. Nothing we can't handle, right? But if I'm feeling all alone, fuck, everything's hard, because everything is hard. So I love how you could do that on such a big level. That would have been great to be in the room to see that happen.
So with like the breath work that you're doing, because I've listened to like the meditation, which because we were actually, just to keep the listeners in them, you were going to do kind of like a breath work at the end, and what I said is better we'll have it as a separate episode. So the next episode that will be going out is, but there's so many different types of people, and I just listened to yours, and I liked, because there's some people, they push the really hyperventilation and the dump, and you don't need to do that. And people think you have to, and maybe touch on that, because you probably, once you go down the breathwork route, you'll see 50 different types of breathwork. And I think because I've probably went to maybe 10 different facilitators, and I saw people like breaking down next to me.
Yeah.
And there's people then that are kind of doing that online, really heavy stuff, and they've nobody to comfort them, and they don't think much of it. They'll be grand. The way we do it is we do it easy, and then we increase it. And, that's kind of like you take off the plaster slowly, and then you just give it a rip. Like, so I'd just like you to touch on that.
Yeah. Okay. So like any space, it's the sort of loudest voices in the room that sometimes get the attention. Okay. So there's the big fireworks experience of, they call it rebirthing or holotrophic, where you hyperventilate to the place you lose your mind and you go all crazy and all that sort of stuff. But, great. Some people like jumping off a bridge attached to a bungee cord. They like the thrill of it. If that works for them, more power to them. But again, right now, the loudest voices in the room are these people. And most people who are just sort of stepping into it, they're the ones that they're coming across. And, is this breath work? You hyperventilate, blow your head off. And then, I believe it's actually, it's one thing to do that. It's irresponsible if there's no follow-up and decompression and debriefing from those experiences. You know what I mean? It's one thing to blow the house.
Just on that, it's very like what you said at the start. Like, people going to say the Tony Robbins event or whatever, they're all pumped and everything, and then they come back to reality. And I actually experienced that, because I was going to him and I was thinking I needed this. And then it was like, I kind of went through my own journey realizing I can just step back, be present, and just breathe.
Yeah.
And it works. But when you get the buzz and you see the trippiness, you come away then and you crave that.
Yeah. Well, some people say the quickest way to hell is to have a divine experience. because you want it again, you want it again, you want it again, and if you're not up there, then you're down there, right? So in my experience, it's not the massive big things we do, it's the small things done regularly that make the biggest difference. Okay, so there was a principle in marksmanship where if you miss the target at 10 centimeters, at 100 meters, at 200 meters, it's 20 centimeters. At 300 meters, it's 30 centimeters. Like the more you miss, the more the further it goes away. But conversely, there is an accumulation effect of doing these small things regularly. And a lot of very successful people have these small micro habits as part of their day. And I notice myself, I'm a pretty motivated dude, but if I can set these things up so they're automated, then they become easy and effortless. It's like waking up and just rolling downhill along this path of powerful micro habits. And the breath work I do with the Breathwork in Bed app, look, the app asks you 2 questions. When do you want to sleep? When do you want to wake up? And we take care of the rest. Now, because most people are busy enough, they just want somebody to say, look, here's what I want, take care of it for me. So I'm a firm believer, if you can do gentle, easy, loving breath work twice a day to drift you into the best sleep, to get you out feeling amazing, then that repetition is what restores. It's not that big massive event you do 1 month and then you've got to sign up and look forward to the next event and that sort of hype about going there. It's like, oh, Christmas is here, great, Christmas, and now I got to look forward to Easter. Now I'm looking forward to Easter, as opposed to how about we just be with this right now and feel good about here and keep returning to that breath. Now, the thing about breath work, and this is what no one tells you, is I don't want to say a dark side, but I will say this. Waking up at 3 a.m., your head's going a million miles an hour. It's used to running the show. And I'll tell you the moment I created Breathwork in Bed, I just gotten divorced. Lost my house, my home, my money, regular access to kids. I was sleeping on the lounge of my parents' living room. And you can believe that at 3 a.m., my head was all over the shop. And if you think of your mind like a garden, whatever you water grows. And I was watering the weeds of stress and doing a pretty good job of that. And those weeds were growing and growing till they get to a certain size, and then eyeballs pop out of them and they become sentient. And they are very aware of the choices you make that feed them and the choices that you make that starve them. And they start controlling you to feed them. And even though I was a breathwork coach, at 3 a.m., these, stress weeds in my head were running the show. And it was like I couldn't breathe, Roy. Like I could write down, yes, I know breathwork will help me right now, but these stress weeds had me so locked down, I couldn't access that. And, right now I'm just talking about it, but trust me, when you're in that situation and you really need breath, it's going to be particularly, you understand what I'm saying now, but you'll also start understanding why it needs to be an externally coached source, because breath work is both conscious and unconscious. At 3 a.m., when I'm about to lose my crap and I'm about to do self-harm, I was either going to take a lot of alcohol, a lot of pills. And I looked at my left thumb, Roy, and I said, Tim, you can take one breath, just take one fucking breath. And I drove into my chest and oh man, it was like I was coming up from air from the grave. And I'm like, this is working, take 2. I drove 2 fingers into my chest. Okay, this is working, take 3. And then get to 5, get to 10. And then somewhere between breath 15 and breath 25, these stress weeds got kicked out. And the rest of my brain was like, thank fuck you kicked them out, Tim. Keep doing this. This is working. Keep doing it. And I'm like, how many other versions of me didn't breathe and hit the bottle that night, hit the pills, and kept doing that? So breath work is powerful, but just know there will be an amount of resistance inside of yourself, hence the need for it to have some sort of external coaching, like pressing a button and then just doing what it tells you to do. And, even myself at 3 a.m., I'm thinking, this is bullshit. This doesn't work. It's all bullshit. But then between breath 15 and 25, it's like, oh, now I get it. Now I've got the piece that I was resistant to. And I'll tell you why breath work is so powerful and why I'm such a fan of it. If you think of us as living, evolving organisms, before we were sentient, before we were putting, paintings on rock walls, as a living organism, we were breathing. So we were breathing before we were thinking. We were breathing before we were speaking. And that deep ancient wiring still lives inside of us, and it outranks this. It kicks our monkey mind to the curb when you can access this correctly. And this is, again, where, like, I'm an ex-professional fighter, and I always fought guys that were more skillful than me, but I knew they could be a black belt up here, but if you take away their lungs, they become a white belt. So your breath outranks your thinking mind, and your thinking mind will resist that. So my gentle breath work to sleep and getting out of bed is there to give you a really easy on-ramp to some very powerful internal chemicals that people don't know they can access. Like when I told the doctor I couldn't sleep, I lost 6 years of my life to pills. I was a zombified pill eater for 6 years, and I can't get that time back. I didn't know breath work could slow my parasympathetic nervous system down, hit the brake on my accelerating, nervous system. Yeah.
No, beautiful. And I mean, like even for myself, like I was late to the party, overcoming my fear of public speaking. I was in my mid-40s, and I remember it was like breath. I was, even because I started entering competitions and everything, it was all about the breath. The breath got me calm, and also like sometimes whether you've got like even a lot of shows or what, because I know you're going on different shows. There's sometimes like that your energy levels go. And how do you get your energy levels? You don't pop, three coffees or take a few. You start breathing, and you find that where was that energy that was just about to 5%, just like you mentioned when you were actually in combat. It was like then you get full energy, and you actually end up having more energy than previous. And
where did that come from? Where did it come from?
So knowing the power of that, knowing you can always, but there's, as you say, sometimes it's like, we know what we need to do, but there's sometimes you need a helping hand to actually go, just breathe.
Oh, and I love it, Roy. What you're talking about there is being a sovereign individual in the way that we are the ones that feed ourselves, that give ourselves the energy. We don't look for an external means. And when you can be that sovereign individual, we nourish ourselves, we meet our own needs. There's less dependence on other things. We're less open to suggestions from the outside. So picture this, like, we are what we marinate in. I kind of see us humans, we're marinating in a consumer society. And if you had two groups of people, Roy, one group of people were sovereign. They could access, they knew how to develop their own resources. They saw the power inside of them and could, improve upon it, and they could build each other up. But then there was another group that didn't know their value, weren't sovereign. Whatever they had was never enough. And because whatever they had was never enough, they'd try and take from others. Which group of people would consume more? So, whether it's by design or default, our consumer society likes it when we're fatigued. Our consumer society likes it when we don't see the value inside of us. And it's not until I didn't discover until I had a chronic injury that we are not in an age of information. We are in an age of marketing. The first 6 pages of Google are marketers. And there's a big difference between a marketer and a healer. Marketers know how to speak those unspoken words inside your heart. Oh, shut up and take my money. But they'll give you a taste of it. But then years later, with all these repeat sales, because that's the goal with marketers, you've blamed yourself. And that took a lot of time and resources. And you know what? I never want to do that again. But if you meet a healer and they're not as obvious, a healer knows they're human. and they know their energy is not enough for two, but they're in touch with something super powerful. And they may have spent 10 years mastering that connection, but they can give it to you in far less time. And you will have that connection for the rest of your life, and they'll show you how to access that regularly. And it took me 6 years to find a psychologist that was completely off page, right? Like he knew the knowledge of on the page, but he knew the knowledge off the page. And he did for me, it took me 6 years to find him, but in 15 minutes, he did for me what no one else could have done in 50 years. And so I just want to say something to everybody who's either wanting to start their healing journey or on their healing journey. Good news and bad news. Good news is healing actually takes far less time than you think, provided you find the right healer. The bad news is you have to be very ready to spend time looking for that right healer. So the hard thing isn't getting healing. The hard thing is going on the journey to find that healer. And that's where a lot of people get lost, because they've worked super hard to try and find healing. It didn't work. And then they just hang out with other lost people because this is just the way it is. And, you know, we're all breaking each other's isolation, being collectively lost. So if you were to start your healing journey, ask yourself, who do I know that is where I want to be? And get their advice. I would hesitate to ask somebody. I would hesitate to ask another veteran who's in the middle of their PTSD what's working for you, because they are full of advice, right? But they're not resonating at the energy level that I want to be at. And what happens with us humans is if I'm hanging out with people that are in the place where I want to be, all of a sudden their energy signature that they're giving off just permeates me. So it's beyond words. It's something that they're embodying. It's their state of being. So hang out with, or ask yourself, who has the state of being that I want to embody? And they're the people that will probably say, hey, that this particular healing modality you don't know about, but here's how you find it. Here's how you can access it. That's where you get all the really juicy inside information. Yeah, so I hope that helps all those people on their journey.
And I mean, like with the sovereignty and just the, being in control. I mean, because if we listen to lame propaganda media, it's just doom and gloom, and we think, oh, World War III is about, we're all doomed and just all terrible. But the reality is, when you're surrounding yourself with the right people, then you'll meet, because you've obviously, especially on your journey, you've met more people, and you kind of, they've been through the journey, and it's more and more. So there's more people stepping into their own sovereignty. That is giving me hope, because you never see that. You never know. Like, nobody tells you all the beautiful things that are happening in the world. All you hear is the negative. But when you actually start looking for it, there's so much goodness out there, and you'll see what you look for. And like for me, I'm seeing more people that I'm able to connect with and go, they're in their breath, let's say, that they're not allowing circumstances control their emotions, because even on simple things like driving a car, someone cross you over, you're not losing the plot like you might 20 years ago, going, look at that idiot. Like, you're just kind of going, I understand he might be having some issues, there could be a screaming kid or whatever, and you're not reacting. But plus, in any circumstances that you are, even if someone's getting smart than you, they back down, because they're expecting you to raise to their level. And when you stay calm, I mean, yourself as a fighter. I don't know how many times I get into circumstances, usually with some idiot that you're with that's drinking, but because I'm as calm, it never escalated, because I think they realize that you're confident, because you're not reacting with anger and just ready to lose the plot. And I'm just seeing more and more people that are in control, which gives me kind of, hope for society.
Oh, No, Roy, I love what you're saying there, because I truly believe that the connected and empowered people, we have the numbers, but we don't have the spotlight. Okay. And when someone tells me that, oh, it's a terrible world, I'm like, is that genuinely your opinion, or is that just the TV speaking through your mouth? Okay. Because I cut out mainstream media. I even turn it off on the radio if I hear it, about 5 years ago, because I noticed when I listened to mainstream media, it was just bad thing, bad. And I ended up becoming really apathetic, and it disempowered me to the point of being inactive. And here's the funny thing. You think as a soldier, I'd get used to fear. Fact was, I never did, but because I was exposed to it so often, I get a really intricate knowledge of how it actually works. You're going to love this. Fear, and again, it's going to be one of those things. I'm going to say this, you're like, oh, that's obvious, right? But fear has a goal, and it's not to scare you. Fear's ultimate goal for you is to immobilize you, to stop you from taking any action. And so the opposite of fear isn't love. The opposite of fear is action. Taking action dispels fear. And the best way I can put it is like, fear is a footprint size puddle that is there. You can genuinely say, yes, it's there. But the second you step in it, boom, it's gone. So taking action dispels fear, because that's the absolute goal. And conversely, inaction, procrastination, that grows it. You know what I mean? So knowing that, yes, the fear is always going to be there, but the second you get into action, that's when it dispels. Yeah.
Brilliant. And there's another thing as well, like, I suppose, a giving attitude, because I know with charities, I mean, you're doing a lot for charities, but I suppose how I see it with my mother is the most loving and giving person. And do people take advantage of her? Definitely. But she's just singing all the time. She's living, proof of not holding on to everything. And I know, like, just listening to the audiobook and everything, but I suppose, where did that come from, your mother? This
Well, yes.
give.
Generosity. I believe truly powerful people are truly generous people. Okay. But my favorite saying now is, I don't give of myself anymore. I give of my abundance. Okay. Because there was a time when I would give of myself, and if I was just adequate and I gave 10% away, there's a part of me saying, I'm down to 90%. You better do something with that 10%. There was an attachment. Okay. Because what nobody knew is, when I was, saving 40 veteran lives from suicide, I stopped counting it at 40 veteran lives. I stopped counting at 40. What nobody knew is, every 6 to 7 weeks, I would have to hit the grog really hard for 3 days, because I was giving of myself. I wasn't giving of my abundance, and I was depreciating. So these days, I'm all about generosity, but I connect to myself first, and I create that abundance. If I'm at 500%, I can give away 20% a day. People can love it, hate it, tell me to F off. It doesn't matter. I'm in touch with something so much more powerful than what can be taken from me. And I'm going to say that again.
Jeez.
When you're in touch with something so much more powerful than what can be taken, that's an incredibly powerful statement to have, because we've all been taken from. And the way I see it is this: if all I've got is 50 cents worth of energy, say, and someone takes 25 cents, that's a massive withdrawal. I want to revenge that stuff. Give that back. Oh my gosh, that's half of it, half of everything. But if I'm an energetic millionaire and someone takes 25 cents, whatever. Okay. Or you might say, in that situation where someone's getting combative, take it, And I've been that guy who's chased 25 cents for years, because it was wrong that it was taken, and I'm right, and that was wrong, and I'm going to try and get that back. But the only reason that person took from me is because they got zero. If I was to really get revenge on that person, I'm not getting anything back, because I only took because there was zero. And it really pays to note, and I discovered this from going from a pretty dark place. The times I was taken from, and if you think of it like a potential, a chart of potential. So this is the vertical axis for the chart of potential, right? Someone took from me, and I'm thinking their potential on the chart is relative to how many victims they can find. Okay, so for that person's potential, they need 5 victims to be at that place. And, those victims usually move on. They're always rotating through different people. And I thought, well, here's what's going to happen. If I go after them, I'm just going to end up like them, trying to take. But if I take the energy, I'd normally sort of try and get revenge, and I invest that energy in me, I'm stepping up, because my potential isn't fixed to like theirs is. Mine is unlimited. So I keep on investing in me, keep on investing in me, keep on investing in me. And there's a great saying, make my enemies dust beneath my feet. Meaning you become so big, you got dust on your feet, you don't even know it's there. It's completely off your radar. So my vision for myself and others is to live like an energetic millionaire. And this is really where you discover what makes you uniquely you. And in the old, I've said it before, energy is like money, how you invest it's how you get it back. And you, Roy, have a very unique energy signature in the way that there's things that you invest energy into that you get a big return back from. If someone else with a different energy signature did the same things you did, they might not get the same return. Some people like playing guitar. I like breathwork. Other people like lifting, running, all these different things that they do to create that energetic millionaire state. An energetic millionaire meaning you got peace, power, love, joy, and confidence. Confidence is the ability to know that if you can think something, that means you can do it. There's no longer like these regretful whispers, oh, well, I wish I could do this. Or, you're actually, energetic millionaires know how to keep pushing that out there, because even if they lose, they can regenerate. The art form of regeneration. If you cut off a hand, you can grow it back. If you cut off your head, you can grow it back. And essentially, to tie it all back, this is what good quality sleep will do for you, because people forget performance is like a pyramid. Top of the pyramid, you're kicking ass, you're hitting your targets, you're making bank, you're doing all the things you want to do, right? But the bottom of the pyramid is your rest, recovery, and healing art forms. It's not just what you do at the gym that makes your performance at the gym powerful. It's the things you do away from the gym. Because if all you ever did was, go to work and work hard, or go to the gym and work hard, and you spent no time rest, recovery, healing, life would just become a chore, just become a crap eating competition. And some people can do that. Oh, look at that guy. He ate 12 hours of crap 7 days a week, and he's done that for 5 years. Good for him, if that works for him. But most humans, this performance pyramid is like a slingshot. You push into your performance, you kick ass, you do what you need to do, but then you push into your rest, recovery, healing art forms. You go into that space where you have that comfort. Then you go into the space where you're, potentially uncomfortable, and you're pushing yourself. Because if you were to spend too much time at the top, you end up fatiguing, burning out, never want to do that again. But then if you spend too much time at the bottom, ironically, if you stay inside your comfort zone, life becomes really uncomfortable. And yeah, again, I think I tangented there, but I hope I ate
that's fantastic. And I mean, one of the things that you've mentioned there, and it's so powerful, because loads of people, when somebody does buy, because we've all been hit with some brush that so many people rip us off, or you lend somebody money, and you're lucky if you get 10% on the dollar when you chase it. But if you put that energy into creating income, and you're right, because I mean, I've had a lot of people that it's even people that worked for me for 8 years, rip me, and it's like, you're not going to get it back, but you try to do it. But if you go through court, I've had over 100 court cases. Whether you win or lose, you lose your energy. And I have won cases, and then you get a bailiff. I've had a case where I got a bailiff to get my money back. I had to pay the bailiff for them to come back and say there's no money. So the amount of energy and time that I put into that, like you've just said, if I put all that energy into income generating, and I know there's a lot of people guilty. So that's very powerful what you've said. I mean, there's a load of powerful messages. Listen, Tim, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'd love to get you back again because we've only scratched on the surface.
No, yeah,
But
yeah.
but like what I'm looking forward to is like people will actually listening to the breathwork that you're going to we're going to have out on the next episode. But you might let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, anyone with a phone can look up 3 words: breathwork in bed. Okay, you can get the app that will guide you to sleep and get you out of bed. There's a bunch of bonus features in there, and I'll give you a hint. Generosity is one of them. If you want to reach out to me personally, breathworkinbed.com. Of course, I've got all the socials, but I truly believe that the world doesn't need more social media. It needs more sleep. But I certainly have that all there. And we do release, quality blogs. In fact, we just released one today about the, sleep better, breathe better on the website. Look, like I said, my closing words will be the real joy of this, once you fall back in love with sleep, your own breath, and the sovereignty of your own body, the wonderful show that'll take place, the flourishing of those seeds of uniqueness and greatness in your life, the things that you just be prepared to be amazed at what comes out when your sleep becomes your new love language.
I'll make sure I'll put the website in the show notes, but also because it wasn't mentioned, but you have it on Android and Apple. So I put the links for both of that just to make it easy for people that they can hit the link and it'll bring them straight to the app. But thank you very much, Tim. So that's all for the meditation podcast. I'll also say the awakening podcast because based on, the veteran stuff that we discussed and just the power of the breathwork and all the lessons that were done today, I think is very relevant to that podcast as well. So you find it on awakeningpodcast.org, the meditationpodcast.org. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rate, and share with your friends and comment on what we discussed. We'd love to read your comments. Until next week, take care.